Hello there everyone, and welcome back to the Brightworks in another match of Beyond All Reason, where we once again find ourselves going to be taking a look at a game that was played quite recently here on Salt Reef. It's a crystal-laden wasteland full of those Duracell battery crystals, and I'm very excited to see what goes on during this match. This map has rapidly climbed, I feel, to the top, or close to the top, of my favorite map picks of the current pool, I guess is the proper way to say that. I really enjoy it. I really think this map has a lot of potential, and I would love to see different iterations of this map too. Maybe a smaller, like, I mean, I know there are essentially different iterations of this with like crystallized plains and with, oh gosh, what's that other one? I'm thinking of another one. There's the Mega Salt Reef as well, which is very fun. I don't know. I love this tile set, and I love the way that this map ends up playing out, so it's super cool to see. Maybe even giving Erebos Lake, a longtime favorite of mine, a run for its money here. Definitely one of those interesting ones. Allows for some cheeky plays. Maybe it's just because I played a pretty good game on it the other day, though. Anyways, today spawning as the Blue Armada Commander. Going to be a commander that goes by the name of the Seeker. Coming in at 30 open skill. Going to be showing us that good old-fashioned Armada T1 bot gameplay. If you watch the Alpha Cup, you're definitely familiar with it. The pawn has been on the rise here recently after a series of buffs. A series of nerfs and then a series of buffs to counteract those nerfs. The pawn is now up and up and has definitely taken precedence here over the grunt, at least in the early game for most of those bot players. Now, still in the 8v8 scene, it's a little bit, I guess you could say it's a little bit more nuanced than that, because going Cortex has its long-term strategic benefits, like, for instance, the Sheldon period. There are other good units too, like the Shiva, which of course is a fabulous option out of the T3 lab as well. But yeah, certainly those pawns can get a lot of value, a lot more value than I think people realize in the early game nowadays. Much more than they used to be able to, because just a little bit of HP has made them suddenly tanky enough that they can do things that they previously couldn't, like challenge LLTs or commanders a little bit easier. Early things like that do start to add up and contribute a significant bonus. A couple of those con bots and res bots were pumped out here, or at least we're getting to the con bots. 2 res bots were pumped out though, and those started eating up those crystals and of course sending a bunch of energy back towards the blue economy. That's a perfect start right here. Basically picture perfect for the blue commander. Not going exceptionally aggressive. This is more on the greedier side. And now going into that contour, definitely making this a greedier play right here from the Seeker. But honestly, on a map this big, it doesn't really bother me all that much. Obviously not the biggest map out there in the pool, but certainly a bigger map of the many that we have to choose from. Spawning towards the back line, but this is still technically a frontline position here for the red team. It's going to be the red team leader, Lord Marshall. Lord Marshall clocking in at 23 open skill. I'm going to be playing his Cortex as well, but going for some of those vehicles. So I'm expecting to see, yeah, there they are, those light laser tanks firing their way across the battlefield here. They fire a little light laser beam out of their schnozzle. Their little main cannon right there fires a very concentrated beam of light out and does a decent amount of damage. So, in the weirdest possible kind of way, the Incisor is sort of the parallel to the pawn right now. In all of the strangest ways, the Incisor ends up being basically the perfect unit to counter the pawn, because it has enough range to brawl with the pawn, and it also has enough speed to out-kite the pawn, so it really is the Cortex best option when going up against those Armada T1 bots. For this front line, though, it's going to basically be 2 Cortex commanders, and I don't think anything else. The Seeker is playing into this middle position, which is always a bit of a funky one. If we take a higher angle right here, you can see... No, not that. Thank you, Javi. As you can see, these commanders have to sort of fight on this weird curve right here that is essentially makes this front line into a really strange situation because, whoa, pardon me, where are the units? There they are. It makes it a really strange situation because suddenly you have these pawns where funky things can happen. Commanders can walk through those T3 units. Some of them can walk through those. Even some T2 amphibious units can go through those. In fact, even some T1 amphibious units. There's a whole bunch of potential. Looks like a nice little trade right here, though. The yellow commander trading out against the blue. We do eventually have some grunts that are moving in as well, and those will be enough to clean up all this, I do believe. But yeah, certainly a bloody battle right there for the blue commander. He's going to go ahead and reclaim all this. Wouldn't mind a resbot eating, or resurrecting, rather, all that as well. Either one works just fine, since it was basically a one-to-one trade right there. The reclaim will be more than efficient enough. The idea being that when your unit dies, you lose about 30% of its value, so you have to gain 30% in the metal of the enemy. Does that make sense? You have to kill 30% of the metal's value. 30% of the value of your army has to be left in wreckage from your enemy's army to come out on top there. Weebaro taking a little bit of a hit right there. Rocketeers firing away into the distance with those long-range, what are they called, actually? Medium ground-to-ground rockets. Okay. Not bad. We've got a giant wall coming up here as well. Dr. Gripgrag. I'm not sure if that's the right way to say that or not. Sounds a bit foul, but Gripgrag, the tank commander here, going to be building a nice big wall full of dragon's teeth, trying to keep the keep the retreating position available here, I suppose. Not like in standing in the LLT here, but eventually, I mean, there's just enough Rocketeers here that it's not really going to matter. We borrow now having to deal with a giant swarm of Rocketeers and not really having the units to deal with it. That being said, they didn't do a particularly great job of focus firing that LLT, so it will, for the time being, stay up and standing. There we go. Rocketeers reinforcing the pawns have to be so careful because, of course, those Rocketeers will fire their missile and pawns are liable to run directly into it. Typically best to keep those two armies separate, but of course it is nice to have that firepower backing up those pawns so that you can sort of utilize it when going up against these units one by one. Firing away now. Trying to, at the very least, fire away towards a bunch of these T1, but taking down these LLTs is really what these Rocketeers are meant for. LOL Mo, the Maroon Commander, going to be going up against Slow Kick and Timex, because extra K and X in there, so Timex. Almost certain that's how that's meant to be pronounced. And Jave going up against the Rocketeers over here. So it seems like the answer is clear. It's the Rocketeer. It rhymes, so it must be true here. All the front lines where we see a bunch of Rocketeers seem to be doing wonderfully. And this is a great position right here, too. Look at that spread on those Rocketeers. Parking them almost directly behind each and every one of these walls right here, making it super, super inconvenient to move forward. A little micro tip for you, but if you put a Rocketeer behind a wall like this, they're just tall enough to be able to shoot their rocket over the wall, while the enemy shooting at them, the rocket will dip just ever so slightly, and it will hit the wall before it hits any of the units over here. I think we'll get a chance to see that right here. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. The wall absorbing, well, most of the shots. No, all the shots, yeah. Making for a really sturdy static defense right here. Suddenly these walls make it basically impossible for the green units to trade out evenly, because every time that they take a shot, they're going to also receive one. Yeah, what an awesome use of those static defenses. I love to see that. That's a great use case right there. Oh, Auric coming in with the play right here. Walking through the water and up onto the high ground here. D-guns down some of those units in the midsection, and now the Seeker is in a really rough way. Suddenly has to make the call whether it's worth it to try and fight this commander, give up the army, and have to deal with the Yellow Com without the army. Oh, okay. Yellow Com might actually throw this one right out the window. That's 12% HP, down to just 11. Okay. Nitrix took quite a lot of damage from those LLTs, and all of a sudden these rockets are getting closer and closer and closer. Ooh, it's a scary situation. Auric much healthier here. Not in nearly as tough of a situation. It looks like the Yellow Com will get away with the assistance here of the Orange. Lucky for that 2 versus 1 right here in the midsection. Otherwise, this could have definitely gone a whole lot worse. And I love that too. The Orange Commander finding a way to use that commander while going into T2. It makes a lot of sense, right? You're not really using this commander unless you're going to use it to go for the middle, and apparently not in the cards right here for Auric so far. Instead, just opting to reclaim from the front line instead of going ahead for that instead of rather going for the reclaim on the commander. Janus does land a hit though, and that's quite nice. Gets a big shot of experience right there as it does so. And the Seeker is now, well, in an uncomfortable situation to say the least. Suddenly has to rely heavily on these static defenses and a bunch of vehicles here. Vehicles obviously quite powerful. They do have that long-range heavy artillery or medium artillery or light artillery as it's named in-game. The light artillery truck, the Shell Shocker, fires a big volley of plasma up into the sky and down upon its foes. Agitator available on the northern side. Big bombing run coming in on the southern side. Weebaro does manage to shoot the scout plane down with the light lasers. Actually matters a whole lot more than you'd think. Without that scout plane, these bombers are particularly blind. But it does look like a company of fighters was sent forward here. What is a group of fighters called? I'm not sure what the military doctrine would call them. Anyways, a bundle of fighters. A falconet? Yeah, a falconet of fighters. That sounds nice. They do manage to scout out the space right here so the bombers can connect. Taking down all the wind turbines is nice, of course. It means that all these LLTs are suddenly going to start, well, running out of energy. Only so slightly, though. There's still plenty of E-Store available right here for the Green Commander. Those fighters also, well, fighters and bombers being shot down by the anti-air. These bombers probably should have moved on a little bit sooner, but they sure didn't. Doesn't matter, though. E-converters will pop, and those wind turbines do fall down. Despite the bomber going down, it still gained tremendous value. Oh, and now I've got a very aggressively placed T2 laboratory up and running right here. When you're in the Brown Commander's position, you see T2 on the front like this, you may as well just boost the lab. There's not really any reason for you to ever produce any more units. The ticks are nice because of the vision, of course. But yeah, locking onto this lab and just helping pump out as many of those T2 as possible is going to essentially win your front line. And then you're free to be as greedy as you want. You can go play the game however you choose. Looks like the push was held right here. A little bit of a reinforcement wave. Wow, okay, Yellow Commander actually gives up at this point. My goodness. Talk about throwing in the towel. The Yellow Commander hands over all of the units. That was the Yellow Comm going down to the purple wave that was pushing forward. Okay. 4 blitzes, enough to teeter the Yellow Commander off their edge and send them plummeting to madness as they give in to the overwhelming firepower of the blitz. Not altogether. Well, okay, that bombing. Sheesh, that bombing. We killed the target, but at what cost? Okay, I'm not sure about that, but yeah, definitely a little bit of an early tap right there from the Yellow Commander. At the very least, Auric, the T2 Commander, is now going to be responsible for cleaning all this up. Those Janices particularly vulnerable to pawns because as long as there's decent enough splitties, the pawns are never really going to get the value that they want. Another bomber wave coming in. Okay, not bad. Obviously, bombers are best if they can catch those units in a line, right? They dive bomb in a big, you know, bombing line. I mean, I don't know what the pattern of that is. A line, I guess. It means that they can connect quite a bit easier whenever they're, well, going against these units across the grain. Still, though, doing a decent amount of damage. The T1 bombers are easy to underestimate, but those whirlwinds can do a significant amount of damage, especially against those T1 units in particular. Rocket Spiders firing away right here. We have a whole bundle of ticks moving forward as well. A nice D-gun, and, well, there's so many LLTs here that, yeah, those ticks really were never going to achieve much, but the Rocket Spiders certainly should, as they have the range and firepower to blast through those statics without really much of a threat. Suddenly, Weebarrow's in a ton of danger. This is the danger of those T1 static defenses. As soon as T2 is out, they're worth nothing. Less than nothing, actually, as they feed the enemy a whole bunch of metal in the long run. Weebarrow forced to give up this line. There's nothing building in the back line. We have the T2 Con, building those T2 mechs, but it's just way slower than the combined metal incomes here of the tan, red, and brown commanders, who got T2 a whole lot quicker as well. Green Comm goes down. Just like that, Rocket Spiders have cracked the southern side. Meanwhile, the blue commander has also essentially petered out on this side as well. The orange comm going to inherit all of this land and all those mechs. And that's a little bit worrisome, actually. It does mean that all of a sudden, things like Platypus become very dangerous, as that T2 Armada bot lab can pump out those very floaty boys, send them right on across this water bridge right here, directly into the backlines of multiple different commanders. It's a power play that I'd love to see coming out from the orange comm, but their Auric is definitely much more focused, for the time being anyways, on making sure to crack this front line. Enough pawns here, I would say. Only 14, but enough as long as not too many of them get D-gun to harass down the Seeker. At the very least, the Rocket Spiders should contribute a little bit of damage here as long as, well, the comm isn't cloaked. Yeah, the Seeker recognizes that the only real... Nice D-guns, though. The only real way out of this is with standing their ground, but there's just not enough. Some killer D-guns, but it really just isn't enough. There's too much T2, and now all of a sudden the blue comm is down. The blue front line is in shambles. The blue T2 lab is nowhere to be seen, and the southern side is once more feeling the pressure. Bombers coming in for their take two, trying to find whatever they can. We have a whole bunch of anti-air here, though. Ooh, we need to adjust this flight path. Ooh, okay, flying directly into the Eradicator support supported by a million missile trucks. Not ideal. Oh, no. One bomb deployed here. Does about 12 damage. An unfortunate response time right there from the pink commander. Didn't quite realize that those bombers were flying to their doom. But sometimes it's just the power of building a little early static defense. It's the reason why going for early bombing runs can be dangerous, is because suddenly you accidentally encourage your opponent to build a whole bunch of static anti-air defense, and that can be very difficult to deal with, especially those bomb-resistant ones like the Eradicator, like the Chainsaw. Spiders points out correctly the blue commander here, with no great options for dealing with them. If you had lobbers here, maybe they could fire up over this hill and onto the top of these. But the Humble Mace has no such high-arc targeting system. It has no high-arc bio-targeting chip, and so instead we'll have to deal with rockets to the face. Never a comfortable situation. Fusion reactor first is a bit of an interesting queue here. Yeah, you know what? We have the metal. We also have the east door. It's doable, but definitely need to upgrade that build power, and that is indeed what the Seeker is going to be going for here, the Blue Commander. Going for some more of those con turrets to try and make sure that this, yeah, this doesn't end up being too little too late. Missile trucks rolling forward. A surprising resurgence from the from the Powder Blue Commander, pumping out a whole bunch of T1 and just sending it forward, and it turns out more stuff beats less stuff. Yeah, it really is that simple, ladies and gentlemen. Rocketeers going to be going up against Spiders, essentially the direct upgrade. You think you look tough? On the upgrade. Must be what those Spiders are thinking. As they fire away here towards Frog Leap, and the base right there of the Seafoam Green Commander, Slowick. Spiders, of course, doing a decent job, but the Welders are on duty to try and shut this down. Slowest race ever here as the Welder tries to catch the Spider. Eventually, the other Rocket Spider will steal the kill, and finally they do go down. Okay, bases are defended. Blue team comes out ahead in economy. Just barely, but they do come out ahead. Surprising, actually, to see how much further ahead they've gotten, considering that the Orange Com has, for the long while here, had tons and tons of T2 mexes up and running. That's the Seafoam Green going down on the northern side. Looks like the medium tanks here are finding value. Rocket Spiders are nice, but I think ultimately what you need here is Webbers. Throwing in a couple Webbers to paralyze those tanks as you're trying to deal with them makes the Recluses 1,000 times more effective against them. You can see whiffing the majority of their rockets against these tanks here. Probably killing more friendly units, in all honesty, than any of the enemies. Ticks, absolute heroes right now. Saving the day as, yeah, there's no such paralyzation, nothing like that available. And yeah, look at these blue res bots. They're eating up all this wreckage right here, getting a gigantic trade. Medium tanks trading out against those Spiders is great. That's a ton of metal going down the drain right now for the Tan Commander. We need to switch off of these. Oh, but it might be too late. Persecutor Cannon is already up and running, and it's firing away here towards the facility. This is going to be difficult to deal with. The solution here might be sharpshooters. One or two sharpshooter can shut this down, but I mean, when you're already being sieged, there's basically nothing you can do because that Persecutor is going to kill anything that's building in your laboratory. Northern side, falling slowly but surely. A Scorpion turret holding it together up here as these thugs do start to fall one by one. 2 shots from a Scorpion turret in order to bring down one of these T1 units, or at least one of these T1 thugs. The aggravators apparently not so healthy. Scorpion turrets are so dangerous. So brutally dangerous. Satyr with some nice D-guns right there. But yeah, I mean, the Persecutor's done it. We have 2 artillery pieces firing away here. What was that? I swear I saw a second artillery come down on top of that. Either way, 2 T2 laboratories destroyed by a single Persecutor is fabulous. Really doesn't get much more efficient than that. Fusion reactor and a bot lab coming up in the backline here for the Green Commander. I think it's going to be on the Cyan. Whoa! Never mind. Spiders have pushed their way forward into the backline right now, and all of a sudden it looks like the entire backline has been destroyed. Blue Commander is just barely holding on to that metal advantage, but I have a feeling that's going to start to fade pretty quickly here as these start to pull apart any of that energy-based conversion economy that just hadn't quite come up and running here in the backline for the blue team. What a critical timing right there. The Orange Commander sending in these Spiders just before those E-converters really came online and managing to find, well, a whole bunch of different stuff. M-Storage is quite annoying to lose as well. You suddenly overflow a bunch of metal to your team. I mean, it's not, you know, the end of the world. It goes to your team, which is nice, but losing that definitely sucks, especially if it was hard-earned metal. You know, you went out there and reclaimed it yourself. It'd be very annoying. Bombers coming in now. Bombs away directly on top of the fusion reactor. Oh, just barely not enough. Just barely not enough from those bombers to bring down that fusion reactor. A very close call right there against the blue commander. Probably got it down to about 20% HP or so before it was repaired back up to full health. Those spiders have done a great amount of work, though. Alright, well, if we zoom out and take a look at the map now, the red team possesses, I would say, about 60 to 70% of the map. Not controlling the metal extractors quite yet, but working on it. LOL Mo, the maroon commander, has decided to move forward and is going to be claiming these metal extractors one by one. I always love to see that. Rocket Spider still being a nuisance here. Oh man, yeah, that is so dangerous. One Rocket Spider is all it takes to ruin a backline because every volley that they fire packs so much punch. 3 guaranteed connections packed into that missile pack. HLT and base might actually end up finding some value today. Manages to blast down that spider alongside a whole bunch of these T1 units that were coming out of the laboratory. The T1's going to become less and less effective over time, and I have to say, the red team is definitely making it work. We're going for cloaked fusions. Isn't that cute? They're a painful but sometimes necessary inefficiency. They cost 4,700 as opposed to, what is it, the 4,100 or something? 4,300? Only 400 extra metal is actually not the end of the world. Quite a bit more energy too, I believe, but they are cloaked. They're not stealth. They're very good though for if you suspect that your enemy is going to go for some sort of bombing run. They're one of the easiest ways to keep your economy nice and safe is if they simply don't know about it. Most people assume that blank dots detected by radar are commanders. And for bombing runs, not necessarily the primary target. Looks like these Recluse are starting to tear apart this front line right here that the blue commander was just barely getting set up. Again, once those T2 are out, those T1 rather static defenses really don't mean much. Shell Shockers trying their best, but not going to be nearly efficient enough. Southern side is going a little bit better here, though. Blue commander's definitely on their back foot. Whoa. Bull tanks sweeping across this front line here. That is a whopping, what, 5 bull tanks? 2 have already gone down, so call it 7. That's a lot of metal, but a lot of effective damage and health output as well. Hey, you know what? I'm gonna call it worthwhile. Sheldon are starting to fall here as well. 410 metal. You could basically call it 2 Sheldon per bull. And these bulls have definitely gotten probably more than that in their value. Nicely done. I like that a lot right there for the green commander on the northern side. Definitely relieves a lot of that pressure at the very least. Ooh, bombers are going in. We do have the T2 vehicle plant though, not producing anything, which is a bit of a shame. It looks like these are accidentally guarding this this laboratory rather than building the fusion reactor like I bet Timex intended. Bombers for the defense. It's as sketchy as it sounds. There's a reason we don't see it often. Most commanders would prefer that the air player keep their bombers away from their units. In 9 out of 10 cases, but when it really comes down to desperation attempts, something has to be done. That boy here, ooh, getting nice value. Yeah, when it finds a big clump of units like this, it is the perfect target for the fat boy. Loads of AoE damage dispersed across all those tanks. Not a lot of single target damage, but loads of AoE damage. Super good. This T1 cluster would be even better, though. Yeah, he's gonna get it. Oh, got those T1 units. Oh, that hurts. Yeah, an immediate retreat right there. Oh no, the Arbiter missiles as well. The Arbiter missiles do connect and manage. Oh, those weren't Arbiter missiles. They were Ambassador missiles, or Negotiators rather. The Cortex Ambassador. They fire a big high arc missile with tons of AoE as well. It does loads of damage, and that managed to connect. I mean, as you could see against those T1 tanks, and immediately devastated them. Sharpshooters here are nice as well. They sort of deny any of that heavy armor from pushing forward. Not until you have either a critical threshold of it or you end up, well, committing some sort of spam forward. We do have the ticks here, but they're being shot down by the beamer turrets, so you have to deal with those first. That's what the ambassadors are for. Slowly but surely whittling down those forces. Turns into a race for units over the static defense. This Persecutor has definitely gotten its value, but I have a feeling that's exactly what these ambassadors are here to fix. Boom. Persecutor immediately devastated. Lovely stuff right there from the Red Commander. Remembering what tools are in the toolkit and using them appropriately. Isn't that just wonderful? T3 Laboratory coming up right here. A slow but steady process, as we don't have much build power over here, but we do have a couple of butlers helping out and some constructors and a commander, all sorts of good stuff. We do eventually have that build power on the way, but at least for the time being, that T3 Laboratory won't have much produced out of it. Spiders, in the meantime, available. A couple of pitbull turrets are here as well, but like I said before, the spider does so much burst damage. Sometimes they can get away with pushing into some of even the heaviest static defense lines because, well, all they need is 1 or 2 shots to effectively push something down. Sprinters looking to, well, sprint around the side. It's a lot of T1, and not a lot of T2. I'm glad we're trying something, though. Definitely better than nothing here. The swarm of ticks moving towards the blitzes that got through. Not bad. Ticks are, in a strange way, one of the best defenses there are because they can simply get in the way of things. They can block most units from moving forward. They become really, really annoying to deal with. But that was all effectively a distraction to move the units away while some of the counterparts here, what do we have? Oh, negotiators as well for the Cyan Commander. Also start firing away here at the units on the front line for the tan, brown, and red commanders. Fusion reactor goes up in smoke here, and the heavy tanks have done it again. Banishers managed to, well, banish that commander. All of a sudden, that brown commander is sent back to whence they came, to be resurrected once more on a different plane at a different time. But not today. Alright. Well, hey, it's a wonderful run by. Yeah, that was basically the entire tan production was actually up here on the front line. Not expecting to be overran. There's plenty of tools in the toolbox here for both factions to get past any kind of static defense measures like that, though. Spiderbots moving forward. Yeah, they're gonna chicken out. The pitbull turret is difficult to justify pushing into, unless you really have to. So I think it's understandable that they didn't opt for that decision. Do we have pinpointers in the back here? It almost smells like we do. Doesn't look like it, but I would like to see it. Make that radar targeting 100% accurate. Banisher's doing a great job of shutting down some of this early T3 that's coming out here. It's Marauders. Bulls in the backline, though. It's a bad situation. Bulls have found the Aphis. And boom goes 2 different bases from the Aphis explosion in the middle of the brown backline. The Bulls manage to do it again as the Banishers provide backup firepower and a whole bunch of these units start to clash. Those heavy tanks have definitely torn apart this front. It's now or never. And I think the pink and maroon forces suddenly realize that. Sheldon trying to fire away at whatever they can, but they're just a little out of range to support this front line, and that is a lot of disposable units. Definitely not the ideal composition here for these Bulls. Sheldons are quite nice, but really ultimately you want to go for Mammoths. Mammoths are kind of the... I'm going to say something that sounds crazy, but I'm going to explain it. Mammoths are effectively the sharpshooters of the Cortex faction. And I'll tell you why. It's because where sharpshooters are very flimsy but do a big burst of damage, the Mammoths are very tanky but do a very small burst of damage. So effectively they can take the hits to do a bunch of damage over time, whereas the sharpshooters can't take very many hits, but they do all their damage in one single shot. Does that make sense? Not applicable in all circumstances, but I think a couple of Mammoths might have been really useful in this front line. Instead, the Bulls absolutely ravaged everything that was included in those compositions, and now they're onwards to destroy, well, some agitators. I'm not entirely sure that taking out this meager fortress right here of T1 static defenses is altogether worth it, but at the very least, having it gone must open up some opportunity paths, for instance, for a bunch of T1 spam that I would hope to see following all this up. It's absolutely critical that you follow up your very expensive units with a whole bunch of inexpensive units. Tiger tanks here. Continuing the push. Yeah, those Banishers have been great for shutting down the Marauder right here. Just a couple of them is all it took for those Marauder to go down. Not the, the cloaked fusions. Cloaked fusions being very tricky. Aphis goes up, so does a whole bunch of E-converters. Razorback now firing away at the Banishers. Man, look at those Banishers go, though. Banisher's so good right here for the Cortex faction right now. They're like a Starlight and a Sharpshooter combined into one. So they can fire in every direction, and they do a huge burst of damage. Pretty epic. Definitely pretty epic. The Seeker very excited, as definitely the entire blue team is. My goodness. Pushed back to the brink of destruction. The blue team manages to pull rabbits out of hats over and over and over again, until eventually they end up in the back line here of the red team and manage to take the win. What a game right there for the blue team. Managing to stick through it to the bitter end and managing to claim the victory. What a fun little game right there on, what was the name of this map again? Well, too late anyways. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next cast. And there's all my replays. Peace out, everybody.